Hey, welcome to Wisdom and Knowledge Broadcast. I'm your host, Jason Hebner. We're here to talk about personality. So, it's no sweat off your nose, but this is my third recording. And it's kind of a hard one. It's kind of a hard one because I'd like to talk a little bit about depression and a little bit about guilt, but mostly about depression. And, well, that's a pretty depressing topic, isn't it? Also, I have no credentials whatsoever. I have no degrees whatsoever. So everything I'm about to tell you, you should seek professional help. And I can't speak to that without any liability. So don't sue me for anything. I'm going to talk about guilt and depression, but seek professional help if you need it. Well, that was a pretty downer. I don't know if I could get much lower than that. Hey, I'm an FI user. Isn't that interesting? Probably not as interesting to you as it is to me, but we're going to talk about FI values versus FE values, okay? Here's FE values. You know, that's where the group has the value set and this function is trying to align with the group. So everybody has to do that. Some people do it easier than others. This function is it's independent of the group, is trying to develop its values. And the group, this person wants the group to align with their values. So, hey, this is the leader, right? Follow my values. Okay, we'll follow your values. Here, he's saying, I'll follow your values. Is that good? Okay, I want to follow that. So FE, FI. Now, think about it. You answer this question. Guilt and depression, okay? Depression is like an internal sad, right? That's not well put. Internally depressed sad. Guilt is similar to shame towards the group. Okay? Guilt is like, I didn't align, right? So if we're looking at through this lens, how wisdom is here, and wisdom needs logic and values are objective and subjective. Which one of these functions are prone towards guilt, and which one of these functions are prone towards depression? Doesn't mean they're going to have it. What do you think? Well, here's my observation. If the group is not following the values of this person, do they feel guilty? No. They get depressed. That's sad. My values aren't being aligned with. And up here, the group says, for values, shake hands when you enter a room. That's our values. You should all shake hands. Or not. Wear a mask or something. Well, this guy, if he doesn't do it, is he going to feel depressed? No, he's going to feel guilty. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So, let's get this straight. From my perspective, FE has the tendency or the propensity to struggle with guilt. Somebody who can execute this well, somebody whose FE function is high up in their function stack, they're going to easily be able to exercise FE, but when they mess up, guilt will be the natural thing they have to contend with and deal with. And with this one, FI, the natural thing that they will have to contend with, if this is high, if Fi is high in their function stack, they're going to have to contend with depression. And to not become depressed when the group doesn't measure up to their values. Neither one of these have a monopoly on what is good, right? The assumption in my case, but it may be different in yours, but the assumption in my case are both of these are trying to align here. But this one finds it best to go with the group's understanding of this, and this one doesn't trust the group for it, but takes it on the burden on themselves. Now we all have all of these functions, we're all using all of these functions, but there's some that are high, some that are low. So here we go. We'll see in here that there's going to be 8 types with Fi at risk for depression, and we're going to have 8 that are at risk of guilt, being guilty, feeling guilty. Feeling guilty. The values, the feelings follow the values. So here we go. Let's look around. Okay, so I'm an ENFP, so working on my own subjective values comes easier to me. Down here we have an FE user. This person, it's easier for them to align with the group. So there's wisdom in the counsel of many. You know, that's where their values are. But when whoever has high FE or is an FE user dominant, then they're going to have TI as a protection that they don't just get swept away. So sure, they'll go along with the group, but their logic is subjective. And so for me, my values are subjective, but it needs to make sense. Like I feel the burden to explain it to the group. And if I can't explain it to the group, it doesn't mean I change my values, but I feel guilty or I'm concerned, or I try to explain it better. So we're talking about depression versus guilt, okay? And again, I'm not certified, I'm just talking to you as a personality enthusiast, coach, guide, whatever you want to call it. I'm just speaking to you in light of the natural cause and effect of understanding the personality in this light. So one last time, look at this, right? Subjective in, subjective values, so Fi, objective values, so Fe, risk of guilt, risk of depression. Now we'll move over to my, don't look back. Okay. So Fe is objective. Fe is extroverted. It's outside. It's values, like I said before, it's kind of like the handshake. Now maybe the handshake isn't the best way to greet somebody. Maybe the how do I want to say this? When you do a value that everybody agrees to, for instance, a handshake, there's a harmony of that value that the FE users try to hold to and make it like universal or customary or however. But in doing that, they pause the refining process. So an FI user doesn't really pause the refining process, but they're always seeking to refine the values subjectively, internally, in their minds, more and more. But the FE user is trying to put a pause on the refinement for the purpose of harmony. So if everybody was refining their own personal values, right? There wouldn't be an accepted value. So like the handshake, going back to the handshake. You shake hands as a gesture of, I'm not your enemy, or I'm here to have communications with you. Like it's a gesture for communication. I'm not finding the right words, but you know what I mean. The value, it's a values thing. It's a values judgment. You shake hands with somebody, you're saying there's some level of camaraderie, and if you refrain from shaking your hand, somebody else's hand, there's obviously a values issue going on. People don't usually not shake hands over logic. They don't shake hands because of some sort of value. So it's a values thing. Well, FI is going to keep refining that. So they may shake hands, but then they include their left hand. Or they try to shake hands, but then they put the hand on the back and tap the back. They shake hands, but they're judging the group's value system. And let's say, just for the sake of discussion, let's say that handshakes to this particular FI user, handshakes are just not up to par in their minds. That we should give hugs instead. Now, let's also say, for the sake of discussion, for the sake of this argument, that hugs are better than handshakes. The FI user will use TE to make appeals, okay? Let's bring this down. The FI users will make appeals to have that changed, basically, to have the FE users change from handshakes to hugs, and they'll use TE. So the FI is going to continually try to refine and improve the values, and never stopping, essentially. And TE will try to broadcast out the values. And if FE rejects it, then TE tries again. And, well, we can get into it. So FE has TI, and so when the logic fails, then the they'll use FE to say, this is bad because the logic is broken, So back to here, depression. So here is the person down here working on their value system, and FE is up here in the open doing its thing. Well, sometimes FI gets stuck on something that it knows from a subjective standpoint is good, but there's I'm thinking about in my case, there's things that I've known that I was doing that was bad. So from a subjective standpoint, the values are just going on inside, and they're being internalized, and the group isn't accepting of them. So I liken this into a cave, and you get these people here. So here this fella is. It's going to be me. I got FI. It could be somebody else. But FI depression is like in this cave, and the group on top they're having a party up there, right? But you're down here, and you can't figure out, how do I participate in the surface? Like, I don't want to live up here. I like to be in my FI subjective values. I don't really care necessarily about aligning with the group's values. They should align with my values. But there's give and take, and I need to be able to know how to get back. But sometimes I don't know how to get back, or somebody doesn't know how to get back. So let's say they're hung up on the hug idea, right? And that hug idea brings them down to depression. They're like, if we only hugged each other instead of hand shook, it would be so much better. The world would be a panacea and everything would be wonderful. Okay, well, an FI user, not an FE user, but an FI user who's had similar struggles can go down into that mental place. And they can, and this is a light issue, right? There's much deeper, much graver issues, how to raise children, and you're seeing them turn out poorly, and you're like, I want to change, but maybe the school system won't change, or this won't change, or maybe it's your job. It can go much, much deeper. Right? This is just of weightiness. Well, the FI user who has hope can go down and sit with the other stuck or depressed FI user. You don't need 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people helping this depressed person down in the cave. But this FI user who's going to go down here, they've got to they can't go to this person's house and help with the kids and maybe help with putting some meals on the table. No, that's not the FI user's job down here. They go down and they sit next to them, or they kind of link the intensity of the emotions. And so if this person has never been depressed, he's not going to really know how to help them out. But if they've struggled through this and found hope on how to get out, right? And they can go down there and say, hey, come with me, just with me. Now up on the surface, the damage that's being done by them being in depression, if FE wants to participate, they can participate on the surface. But to go, what I see sometimes is FE users not understanding depression at all. And thinking, oh, I felt guilty before, so I know how to blah, 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 blah. It's like, I want to slap them. Because it's like, you haven't necessarily gone through these times of depression. And so you think it's just going to last. Oh, it's a day or 2, or a day or 3 or 4 or 5. And so FE is like, hey, come on. Okay, don't be depressed. Don't do that. Don't do that. You're okay. Are you okay now? Are you okay now? But they don't understand that it's an issue of the values that have been aligned. And listen, they might be right, and the group is wrong. Either one of these, objective values or subjective values, neither one of these have a monopoly on right, on what is good. They're both necessary. And so sometimes the depression is having a bad impact. But it might be good values. That might be hard for an FE user to hear, but that's the case. And so it is good for a wise FI user to come alongside and help determine with this person, are these values worth holding? Are your emotions proportional to the issue? Just 1 or 2 wise FI users. But to have these FE users moving down in here and thinking they can help them in and help them out, that's depression. So the FI user is helped can be led out by another FI user, a wiser, stronger FI user. Say, look, here's the path I took. Don't go that way on the way out. Don't go this way. You'll get trapped again. Just keep following me. And they put their elbow on their shoulder and they say, come on, let's go. We can get out of this. And they can be brought up to where they can go back and forth between the FI, FE. FE users, what I've observed from the FE users, and my observations are not they're limited. I've studied this for about 3 to 4 years, and what I've observed in FE users is that they can get to the same place of incapacitation as the FI users, but there is generally a way, because there's so many people available up here at the surface, there's generally some sort of reconciliation of mind, and they can be brought back. So my wife is an FE user, dominant, and I'm an FI user. And I've seen her have real struggles sometimes, but the struggles are very real, very incapacitating for a much shorter time than what I've had to work through when I've seen my values not being the values that I'm holding when I've watched the group disregard them. So that depression is a lot more difficult to like you can't change or you can, right? You can, maybe you're holding the wrong values, but if you're holding, let's say for the sake of discussion, you're holding the right values and the group isn't, that's rough. And it takes an FI user, a wise one, to explain a way to get out of that depression. An FE user, they can see the failings of the group, but usually the whole group. See, I guess that's kind of what it is with the FE guilt. If they don't measure up to the group, there's guilt there. If they see as a group, we've done something bad together. We've held this view of always shaking hands and never hugging. Okay, the whole group can all sympathize with each other. Oh, we've done this bad thing, and then, oh, who else would have known? Who would have known? Who would have thought, right? That this could actually be a bad thing. So that's FE, and they kind of work as a team. It's kind of like there's harmony. But the FI user, they're alone. And that's why I love the illustration of the cave, is because they don't mind being alone, actually. They just need to be able to move back and forth. But sometimes they get stuck and they don't know how to get out. FE users get stuck too, but they get stuck in a group and they're more blind to their, because it seems it's objective. So if it's objective, I think, pardon me, I have to work this out some more. Poor TE folks. I don't mean to be saying FI is worse, but I think, so if you have FE, you definitely have TI associated with your FE. So I think somehow we'll see that the FE, or that the TI, there's some sort of depression with this that could be associated with this, because it's the internal logic not being the group not aligning with the internal logic. But I don't think it comes out in the same way. I think there's probably going to be another explanation that's similar to depression, excuse me, but not depression itself. But I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm just talking to you. This is a broadcast, right? So, does that make sense, though? I hope. Ask me questions if you'd like. We're talking about wisdom. Wisdom's the goal. Values are the area of speaking about depression versus guilt. Guilt up here is more short term, generally, I mean, if you did some sort of, maybe you got in a car accident and somebody died, and you have FE, maybe I'm sure the guilt could become overwhelming. I'm not even making a recommendation for that. I'm just saying in this one, speaking from personal experience, and as we observe the process, we don't need the whole group to go down in the cave to help the FI user. You need one or two wise FI users, and they can help. Maybe they don't have the ability, but that would be what I would think is a useful path to take, especially in a church setting or where we want to use God's values. A wise FI user can lead somebody through the depression versus an FE user who will have a much more difficult time being able to empathize with what's going on. So, hope that helps. It's helped me. I'm definitely going to use it. I use it with my own children if I have an FI user versus the FE users. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. Thanks for watching. If you give me a thumbs up or you can't do thumbs down. I even would like a thumbs down if I could just see some sort of response. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching this broadcast, and until next time.